In this episode of the Stretch Goals podcast, Scott and I are going to be talking about how to be productive working from home. This is the Stretch Goals podcast, where each week we share insights and lessons learned based on our experiences as entrepreneurs. We'll challenge you to create ambitious goals as you start and grow your business. I'm your host, Robert Dickerson.
And I'm Scott Davis.
So Scott, how are you productive from home? You've got kids at home. You've got
alcohol,
all your toys, alcohol right behind you. How do you get any work done in that office?
Yeah, it changes daily. It changes daily, right? I mean, there's some days where the kids are running around crazy where, that's very distracting, especially if you've got meetings. It makes it difficult. But what I try to do is I try to keep my schedule a little organically open. I've got core hours where I know the kids are napping, where I'm definitely working always. But the rest of the day is kind of if the kids are in a bad mood or my wife needs a break, then I'm just going to work 7 p.m. to midnight tonight to make up that difference, right? So there's core hours for me, but really it's all about, and sometimes you touched on this previously, if you're not feeling good, if you need to get out and just get some fresh air, play some basketball or go work out, that helps reset you. So I don't try to necessarily make set hours because it makes me too stressed, right? So that's how I keep my productivity up is I get what needs to be done and then I go take care of something else. And I just kind of keep my schedule all free flowing and, organic. So what about you?
Yeah. I mean, I like the flexibility. That's something that I try to do a lot as well, whether I'm, get a lot of stuff done in the morning, then have meetings in the evening or in the afternoon, and then, work at night. I try to keep that flexibility as well, because when you're working from home, you can work at any time. And that's, that can be a positive and that can be a negative too, because it's a positive because you can move your work around, but it's a negative because it's hard to really separate yourself from your work.
Yeah. When it's hard to separate yourself too from what's going on at home, if you've got a contractor there or you've got, a kid who's sick, it weighs on you a little bit more, but honestly, I can't imagine ever going back to a 9-to-5 environment. It's too restricting. You can't run to deposit a check. You can't get a flat tire fixed. You can't do anything because you're judged on the amount of time that you're in the office, not the work that you're doing. And I know personally, I get 2 to 3 times more work done working from home in my own, direction than I did working in an office environment.
Yeah, I'm the same way. One thing that I try to do, if you read any of the articles about deep work, where you really try to focus for a couple hours, that's something I really try to do. I try to set aside times both in the morning and the afternoon where I can get 2 to 3 hours of really focused work, uninterrupted work done. And what I try to do is schedule, different days. I'm very productive in the morning from 9 to noon is probably my most productive time. And so I really try to keep those times free so I can focus on things that I need to get done. And then around lunchtime, a lot of times I'll schedule meetings or, lunch meetings or phone calls, or right after lunch, I'll schedule calls as well when I'm not, I'm just trying to get back into it. And then, usually in the afternoon, I'll go work out, go for a run or to the gym, around 2:00 where I feel like I'm kind of fading out a little bit. And then from 3 to 5 until I pick up my kids, I'll really have some focused work then to get stuff done. And then after dinner too, a lot of times from 9 to 11 or so, a couple nights a week, I'll really take time and really focus on that after the kids go to bed.
Sure. I'm a little bit different. I'm not, I like being up in the mornings. I like to read. I like to, do some knowledge gaining in the mornings. I usually catch up on emails, social media, things like that, eat some breakfast, play with the kids. I try to get meetings and things I hate out of the way. I try to do podcast recording, but no, in the afternoons is when I really, it's from 12 to 5, I'm that's my time. And if that gets broken up because, you've got meetings and things like that, it really affects me. I have in my mind what I'm getting done today. And if a meeting impacts that, it's really difficult for me because then I'm going to work at night. But where I'm most focused is probably 9 p.m. to 2 in the morning. I don't do that shift as much these days, but when I do, man, the code just flies off my fingers. That's my focus time. It's dark, it's quiet, nobody's there. But let's get back to like what we're talking about. Like, how can you be effective working from home? A lot of places where you work from home, though, you have to keep a confined schedule. You have working hours, and it's usually like 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or something like that. So that may not really jive with what you're doing. But my suggestion is, if you've got a 9 to 5 work from home and you've got to do those working hours, do what you can. Be responsive during that time. Like, maybe just take your phone with you and have Slack running or Google Hangouts or whatever, and be responsive. But doesn't mean you have to be bolted down to your seat the whole time. Like, you still have the flexibility, even though you've got these core working hours. It just means you have to be responsive.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you were saying, like we both work differently. I think you have to figure out what schedule works for you, and it's a little bit of trial and error. I know when I first started working from home, I tried different things to figure out, what my schedule would look like, how I would work on different tasks. Like when I first started, I was working for different customers. So I'd divide up each day to a different customer instead of trying to like multitask things during the day, right? Work on one thing for an hour, then switch to another task. It just became too hard to switch back and forth. So I tried to focus over larger periods of time on a day basis on a specific task. And so that's just something that works for me. But, you can experiment with different ways to work, and try to be productive. And like Scott said, find those hours when you're most productive and try not to schedule meetings during those times. Try to keep those free, whether you need to block off your calendar to make sure people don't schedule meetings. I know sometimes you can't do that if, there's required meetings and things like that. But if you can, try to do that and really figure out what works best for you.
Yeah. And I think that's great. I mean, if you can block out those times, like you said, that's going to be the greatest thing for you. And you're going to find that you get way more work done than you do when you're in that office environment. And, people all the time ask me, or say, hey, I couldn't work from home because I would miss talking to people. I don't. I'm a doer, man. Like I don't need the water cooler chat. I mean, in fact, us doing this podcast is the most I talk to people really all week, and that's enough for me. But, when I transitioned from corporate to work from home, it was easy for me. Like I immediately was more effective. I didn't have to do anything like, oh man, I can't get anything done. I'm staring out the window or playing video games. That's not the case. Like if anything, it's like, hey, I got all my work done. Now what am I supposed to do? Right. So I was working like first thing in the morning before I had kids. I'd work from 9 to 12. I'd be done on a Tuesday with everything I needed to do for the week. So I'd stop for a little bit, play some video games, grab some lunch, and then hit my manager up and be like, hey, I need more to do. So that's just how I am. Like when I can get in that zone, it was an easy transition for me.
Well, you feel a sense of accomplishment, a sense of productivity. I feel like when when you have that uninterrupted time, whereas when you're in an office, you got people. I mean, that's the biggest change for me is that, I was kind of worried about that day-to-day talking to people over the water cooler because I enjoy doing that, meeting people for lunch. And I was worried that if I was working from home, I was going to miss that. But what I've found is that I go to lunch with people, I have phone calls with people, I do just as much engagement as I would in the office. But what's removed is people bugging me during those core times that I really need to focus. So you get to choose. And I think that's the biggest thing is you get to choose when you have that engagement, when it makes sense, and then when you can focus. And that's what I really like about working from home. And, the other thing, I've heard the same thing from people that say, I can never work from home. There's too many distractions and that is difficult, right? You have to be really mindful that you're not going to watch TV when you need to get something done, right? You need to make sure that you stay focused and use those breaks to kind of separate your day to make yourself more productive and get yourself in the right frame of mind.
Sure. And I think initially when you first start working from home, there's that temptation to, maybe watch some TV, take a nap, play with the dogs, but that wears off, right? Especially when you have work to do. And for me, it's just kind of like, I don't know, but I think people have it in their mind that like they kind of just do whatever they want and they'll work like an hour a day and that's it. Like, and that's fine, but you'll get weeded out real quick. Like you still have to get your stuff done. And for me, like sometimes I just like to get all my work done all at once. Like I might even work, before I got married and had kids, I would work 24 hours straight be done for the week. You know, like that's just how it is. So like, I don't know. It's for me, I don't miss talking to people. I'm a typical programmer. Like put me in a dark room with no light and just let me work, you know, but I
Yeah,
think
but you say that, but we have these podcasts, you have meetings, you have
yeah,
customer engagements, you go to trade shows and
yeah,
conferences. So I mean, you're still engaged with people, but
absolutely.
like you said, but you can have that time that you can really focus, that you're not
Right.
interrupted.
Yeah, and I hated being in the office and would be in the zone and, hey, Scott, can you help me out with a problem? I'm like, oh, you know, like you don't want to be a jerk, but you're like, dude, like, let me finish this thing. Like, I'm almost done, you know? So, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I love talking to people, but when I'm in the zone, I want to be in the zone, leave me alone. And that's why working from home works great for me. I don't think I think there's probably some personality types where it wouldn't be good for, perhaps. But I think I could see a world where everybody worked remotely, me personally, because that's how it works for me. But obviously we can't all do that. And some people aren't good at it.
I mean, did you ever have days in the corporate world where you'd get to the end of the day, it'd be 5 o'clock, and you hadn't accomplished the one task that you wanted to
Oh yeah.
do the whole day because you got interrupted by meetings and
Oh yeah. All the time. And like I said earlier in this podcast, it stays with me, and I'm not sleeping tonight because I didn't get that done. Right. So I would end up working from home at night just to get that stuff done because that's just how I am. Like I want to get my things done. So yeah, that happened all the time and it was frustrating. And there were days, like usually it was a Friday in the summer, where I would just go talk with people in the office the whole day and deliberately wouldn't do any work. You know, I'd be like, let me see what I can do until lunchtime. And then I'm going to go get out for an hour and a half. And then I'm going to come back and, you know, try not to stare at the back of my eyelids. You know? But there were days when you had that, right? So, and there were, you know, I'm trying to think, like, have I like deliberately at all in the last year, like done nothing while working from home? And the answer is honestly no. There's not been one day where I'm like, I'm not going to work today. Like I love going to my office and working. I love being here and doing things.
yeah, I agree. I mean, there hasn't been a day where I haven't had a million things to do that I'm like, well, what should I do today?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I wanted to talk about too is that if you're working on a problem, a lot of times in the corporate world, you just have to continually sit there and bang on it. And I really like the fact that, you know, I can get up and I can go do something else, like go work out or go
Yeah.
outside for a bit and, you know, kind of take my mind off. And that really helps me focus on. So when I come back, I'm refreshed and I can really sit down and solve it quickly rather than if I just sat there for a day. I mean, probably all of us have had this happen when
Yep.
you know, you go home at night and you come back in the morning, you solve the problem. You were sitting there for 4 hours the day before, you fix it in a couple of minutes, or you solve the issue. So I like that flexibility, you know, about work. And I guess the final thing to kind of wrap up this topic I wanted to talk about was really how can you separate yourself from your work when you're working at home, because the boundaries now are not as clearly defined, because when you come home from the office, you know, your home is kind of a separate place and you know, can kind of relax. But when you're working from home, you know, your office is just down the hall, right? And you're kind of
Yep.
always drawn to go back and do work or work for an hour here and there. And that for me, that's really, that balancing act has been something that I'm continuously working on to figure out, you know, kind of define those core working hours still, you know, even if I do work in the evening and stuff like that, but try to restrict those to certain hours or certain
Mm-hmm.
maybe issues or things like that that I only address at those times.
Yeah, there's a family life balance, as you probably know. You know, if you work, you know, during the time when you can play with the kids too many days in a row, you're going to get a lot of, you know, flack at home. So I cut off at 5 or 5:30 every day. I do dinner with the family. I play with the kids until after they go to bed. After they go to bed, if I'm really busy, you know, I'll let my wife know, hey, I'm going to have to work tonight. I'm really sorry. You know, make her know that, you know, I want to spend time with her. But at this time I got to work. And then if it's not as critical, but I still need to get some things done so I can sleep or just so I can meet my deadlines, I'll wait until she goes to bed and then I'll work on those things. And that's how I usually do it. You know, like I try not to, I like to get to a stopping point. And if I don't, sometimes I kind of take that with me while I'm eating dinner. I'm still thinking about it, but usually I cut it off and I'm good until everybody's in bed.
Yeah, I do the same thing, is try to really define those times where I can spend time with my family. Because I mean, there's important things in all of our lives that we want to focus on, and work can't be the sole thing we always do. So you have to take the advantage of the flexibility and still try to figure out boundaries where it's not bleeding over into your life. And a lot of people talk about, there is no work-life balance, right? Work is life. And I mean, there's some truth to that, right? I mean, but you still have to kind of define those boundaries. And it's something when you're working from home, it takes a little bit of time to figure out what works for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Those people who say that, they're not married and they don't have kids. So,
It's funny. I'll listen to podcasts of people that are being productive, and they say, "Oh, I get up at 4 a.m. and I meditate." I just think, why don't you have a baby and then let me know if you're getting up at 4 a.m. to meditate, because you're probably getting up to feed a screaming child.
yeah. Yeah. Different kind of meditation.
Life changes quickly.
Indeed. Thanks, guys. Give us a listen on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, and check us out on social media.